The measure of a man. Keanu Reeves sat calmly under the glowing studio lights, his signature black suit crisp, his demeanor effortlessly composed. Across from him, Elon Musk lounged in his seat, a self-assured smirk on his face. The host, a polished media figure, introduced the two men to the audience. Their names met with a thunderous round of applause. The anticipation in the room was electric, the kind of tension that precedes an unpredictable storm. Millions were tuned in worldwide, eager to witness the clash of two icons. One, a billionaire tech mogul known for his audacity, and the other, a beloved actor known for his humility. Elon leaned forward, adjusting his mic. His voice carried the casual arrogance of a man who believed himself the smartest in the room. "Keanu," he said, drawing out the name like an afterthought. "You're one of Hollywood's biggest stars. You've had a long career, and people love you. But let's be real. You don't invest in tech. You don't own a company. You're not even on the billionaire list. No private jet, no space program, no futuristic AI project." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "So tell me, what do you even do with your money?" The audience fell into an awkward silence. Some exchanged glances, others leaned forward, eager for the response. The question was a thinly veiled challenge, a jab from a man who measured success in wealth, power, and technological conquest. Keanu, however, remained unfazed. He smiled, a small, almost amused curve of his lips, before adjusting the cuffs of his suit. He took a slow breath, his gaze unwavering as he met Elon's eyes. "I live," he said simply. The response was so unexpected that even the host blinked in surprise. Elon raised an eyebrow, his smirk faltering just slightly. Keanu leaned forward now, mirroring Elon's posture. "I wake up in the morning and breathe in fresh air. I take the subway. I walk through the city. I spend my time with people I love. I help where I can. I listen. I learn. I exist in a way that isn't tied to numbers or bank accounts." The crowd stirred. Some nodded. Others whispered. Elon chuckled, shaking his head. "That's a nice sentiment, Keanu. But let's not pretend that money doesn't matter. You could be doing so much more if you actually invested. If you had real wealth." "Real wealth?" Keanu cut in, his voice quiet but firm. "Do you think money is the only measure of a man?" The room grew even quieter. Elon smirked, leaning back. "Well, it's certainly a big one." Keanu regarded him for a long moment, then let out a soft chuckle. "You know, I've met people who have nothing, and yet they give everything they have. I've sat with strangers who shared their last meal, held hands with people who have lost everything. And still, they find a way to smile. What does that tell you?" Elon shrugged. "That people can be sentimental." Keanu smiled again, this time with something deeper in his eyes. Something old, something that had seen the world beyond boardrooms and algorithms. That the richest man in the room isn't always the one with the most money. There was a pause. The audience was enthralled. Elon, despite his bravado, looked momentarily thrown. "All right, Keanu, let me ask you this. If you had $1 billion right now, what would you do with it?" Keanu's smile didn't waver. "I'd give it away." A ripple went through the room. Elon laughed, shaking his head. "Come on, man. That's ridiculous. Why would you give away $1 billion? What about your legacy? Your name?" Keanu leaned back, his expression unreadable. "A legacy isn't about how much money you leave behind, Elon. It's about how you make people feel while you're here." The words hit differently. Even Elon, for all his bravado, had nothing immediate to say. The host, sensing the shift, cleared his throat and interjected. "That's a powerful perspective, Keanu. But let's be real. Money does provide opportunities. Don't you think that having billions could allow you to do more good?" Keanu nodded thoughtfully. "Of course, money can be a tool. It can help build hospitals, fund research, support artists, and uplift communities. But it can also build walls, fuel greed, and divide people. It's not about how much money you have. It's about how you use it. Elon, still skeptical, leaned in again. All right, then tell me, what's the most valuable thing you own? Keanu was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out an old, worn-out movie ticket stub. The host frowned. Elon squinted at it. Keanu held it up. This, he said softly. This is a ticket to a movie my mother and I watched together when I was 10. We didn't have much. But that day, she saved up enough to take me to see a film. And for 2 hours, we escaped reality. We laughed, we cried, we dreamed. This little piece of paper, it means more to me than all the money in the world. A hush settled over the room. For once, Elon Musk had no snarky comeback. The host swallowed hard. The audience, they erupted into applause. Keanu smiled, slipping the ticket back into his pocket. Somewhere in the audience, someone whispered, "Now that is a wealthy man." And for the first time that evening, Elon Musk looked like he wasn't so sure who had really won. The weight of wealth. The interview had become an instant sensation. Clips of Keanu's response to Elon Musk's wealth-driven remarks flooded social media, igniting debates across platforms. Some hailed Keanu as the embodiment of wisdom and humility, while others sided with Musk, arguing that wealth was indeed the ultimate measure of success. The world was divided, but one thing was clear. This conversation had struck a nerve. A billionaire's retort. Elon Musk, never one to back down from a challenge, found himself restless in the days that followed. The world was talking, but for the first time in a long time, he wasn't the one controlling the narrative. His carefully curated persona of an innovative genius, the man destined to lead humanity into the future, had been momentarily overshadowed by an actor who didn't even care about wealth. It gnawed at him. One evening, Elon took to his X account, formerly Twitter, and posted, "Keanu says wealth isn't important. Funny, coming from someone worth millions. Try changing the world without resources, then we'll talk." The tweet instantly went viral, sparking another wave of discourse. Supporters of Musk praised his pragmatism, while Keanu's fans countered that making a difference wasn't just about money, it was about heart. Keanu, however, didn't respond. He wasn't the type to engage in social media battles. Instead, he continued his life as he always had, quietly, humbly, and with purpose. A visit to the forgotten. A few days later, a journalist tracked Keanu down in New York City. Unlike other celebrities, he wasn't hiding behind security or luxury cars. Instead, he was sitting on a bench in Central Park, sharing a meal with a homeless man. The journalist, hesitant at first, eventually mustered the courage to approach. "Mr. Reeves," she said, notebook in hand, "may I ask why you're here?" Keanu looked up and smiled. "Of course." The journalist gestured toward the man beside him, who was carefully unwrapping a sandwich Keanu had just bought for him. "Most people in your position don't spend their time like this. Why do you?" Keanu leaned back, glancing up at the sky. "Because I understand what it means to have nothing." The journalist frowned. "But you're a movie star. You've been famous for decades." Keanu nodded. "And before that, I was a kid with a struggling mother, moving from place to place, never quite knowing what stability felt like. I know what it's like to wonder if tomorrow will be kinder than today." She hesitated, flipping through her notes. "There's been a lot of talk about your interview with Elon Musk. People want to know, do you really not care about wealth?" Keanu exhaled softly, watching a pair of birds peck at the ground. "I care about what wealth can do. I care about using it to help people who need it. But I don't care about having it for the sake of having it." The journalist tapped her pen against her notepad. "Elon Musk responded to you online. He said you can't change the world without resources. What's your take on that?" Keanu considered this for a moment before responding. "He's right about one thing. You do need resources to create large-scale change. But he's wrong if he thinks resources are just money." He gestured toward the man beside him. This man here, he doesn't have billions, but he has kindness. He shares what little he has with others in the shelter. He listens. He cares. That's a resource too. The homeless man, who had been quietly eating, smiled. You don't need money to be rich, he murmured. You just need to have something worth giving. The journalist was silent for a moment. Then she asked, do you think Elon Musk would ever understand that? Keanu chuckled. I think he's a brilliant man, and I respect what he's built. But sometimes, when you're surrounded by too much wealth, it's easy to forget the simple things. The billionaires gamble. Meanwhile, back in Silicon Valley, Elon Musk wasn't done with the conversation. His pride had taken a hit, and he wanted to prove a point. He gathered his team and announced a new initiative. An experiment to see whether generosity could truly make an impact without a billionaire's direct intervention. His idea? A challenge. Let's see how much real change Keanu can create. I'll donate $100 million, but only if he chooses where it goes. The announcement sent shockwaves through the media. It wasn't just a test of philanthropy. It was a direct challenge. Would Keanu accept? And if he did, how would he use the money? Keanu's decision. When reporters reached out to Keanu for a response, he simply smiled and said, I don't need to accept a challenge to do what's right. But if Elon is serious about helping people, he should donate that money without needing me to tell him where. Musk, amused yet intrigued, countered, fair enough. But humor me. If you were to decide, where would it go? Keanu finally gave his answer. To those who need it most, the ones you don't see in boardrooms, the ones who aren't making headlines, the single mothers working 2 jobs, the veterans who came home to nothing, the kids who dream of an education but can't afford one. The response was met with a mix of admiration and skepticism. Some doubted Musk would actually go through with it. Others wondered if Keanu's idealism was too naive for a world run by money. Then something unexpected happened. A moment of reflection. One evening, Musk found himself watching an old interview of Keanu. It was from the early 2000s, back when Keanu was at the height of the Matrix fame. In the clip, a younger Keanu talked about how he had secretly donated most of his earnings from the franchise to the film's special effects and costume teams, people who rarely got the spotlight but had worked tirelessly behind the scenes. It wasn't for recognition. It wasn't for headlines. It was simply because he believed they deserved it. For the first time in a long time, Musk felt something unfamiliar: doubt. Had he, in his pursuit of innovation and expansion, lost sight of what truly mattered? Had he become so fixated on wealth as a tool that he had forgotten the human stories behind it? That night, without an announcement, without a tweet, without a press release, Musk authorized the first $10 million of his pledge to be sent to community-driven charities. Keanu never commented on it. He didn't need to. Some lessons don't need to be taught through words. Sometimes you just have to lead by example. The legacy of giving. A silent revolution begins. Elon Musk's quiet donation of $10 million sent shockwaves through the media. Though it had no official announcement, keen-eyed reporters uncovered the massive transfer of funds to several grassroots organizations, community-driven shelters, education initiatives, and veteran support programs. The billionaire who once questioned the impact of non-financial wealth had, whether consciously or not, taken a step in the direction Keanu Reeves had been advocating for all along. Social media was ablaze with speculation. Was Musk truly inspired by Keanu's words? Was this just a PR stunt to control the narrative, or had something deeper shifted within him? For Keanu, none of that mattered. He hadn't asked for a battle. He hadn't set out to challenge a billionaire's mindset. He simply continued living the way he always had, showing kindness without expecting anything in return. But the world was watching now. And more importantly, so was Elon. The press frenzy and an unexpected invitation. The press hounded Keanu, desperate for a reaction. Every headline screamed for attention. Did Keanu Reeves change Elon Musk? Musk's secret donation, inspired by a Hollywood star. The humble actor versus the billionaire titan. Who's really winning? Yet Keanu gave no statements. He neither claimed credit nor fueled the fire. He simply continued his routine, riding the subway, quietly donating to charities, and engaging with people in the simplest, most human ways. Then one morning, a letter arrived. Not an email, not a formal invitation through an assistant. A handwritten letter. It was from Elon Musk. Keanu read it in silence, the edges of his lips curling slightly in amusement. Musk wasn't asking for an interview, nor was he issuing another challenge. Instead, it was a direct invitation. I'd like to meet again. No cameras, no audience, just a conversation. Keanu folded the letter and slipped it into his coat pocket. He had no idea what Musk wanted, but he was willing to listen. A meeting of two worlds. The meeting took place at an unassuming cafe in downtown Los Angeles. No security, no corporate entourage. Just two men at a small corner table, sipping coffee. For the first few minutes, they sat in silence. The city hummed around them, the distant sound of traffic, the clinking of cups, the quiet chatter of strangers. It was Keanu who broke the silence first. "You don't strike me as a man who enjoys small cafes," he said, a trace of humor in his voice. Musk smirked, stirring his espresso. "You don't strike me as a man who cares about billionaires." Keanu shrugged. "I care about people." Musk studied him for a moment before setting his spoon down. "You made me think," he admitted, "and that's rare." Keanu said nothing, waiting. Musk leaned back, tapping his fingers against the table. "I built Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink. I push humanity forward, or at least I try to. But that interview, it made me wonder if I've been missing something." Keanu took a slow sip of his coffee. "And what's that?" Musk exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "Impact. Not just on a global scale, but on an individual one. I've always thought of changing the world as something massive. Colonizing Mars, advancing AI, building the future. But you make it sound like change happens in small moments." Keanu smiled slightly. "Because it does." Musk frowned. "But that's not enough. The world doesn't run on goodwill alone." Keanu set his cup down gently. "You're right. But the world doesn't run on wealth alone, either." A flicker of frustration crossed Musk's face. "You say money doesn't matter, but that's easy to say when you have millions." Keanu nodded. "I'm not saying money doesn't matter. I'm saying what you do with it is what counts." Musk tapped the table again, as if calculating something in his mind. "So let's say I wanted to do more. Not for headlines, not for PR, just more. What would you do if you were me?" Keanu chuckled. "I wouldn't be you." Musk rolled his eyes. "You know what I mean." Keanu's expression softened. "I'd listen." Musk raised an eyebrow. "To who?" "To the people who never get heard." The power of listening. Musk sat back, arms crossed. He wasn't used to being the one receiving advice. He was usually the one giving it. Keanu continued, his voice quiet but firm. "You build for the future, but have you ever sat with the people struggling in the present? Have you ever walked through a shelter and heard their stories? Have you ever asked a struggling mother what she needs, instead of assuming you know?" Musk was silent. Keanu leaned forward. "You want to create real change. Start there. Not with board meetings, not with billion-dollar investments. Start by listening." Musk scoffed. "And what, just sit around and talk to people?" Keanu nodded. "It's harder than it sounds." Musk exhaled. "All right, let's say I do that. What next?" Keanu's eyes held something deep, something that had seen both hardship and hope. "Then you act. Not as a billionaire trying to save the world, but as a person who understands it. The experiment." For the next month, something unheard of happened. Elon Musk, one of the richest men in the world, went quiet. He disappeared from the public eye. There were no new tweets, no big announcements, no controversial statements. But behind the scenes, something was shifting. Unbeknownst to the media, Musk took Keanu's advice. He visited shelters, sat in on community meetings, and met people outside of his usual orbit. He listened to single mothers, war veterans, teachers struggling to fund their classrooms. He asked them the simplest yet most important question: what do you need? And the answers were not what he expected. They didn't need rockets. They didn't need AI. They didn't need billion-dollar projects. They needed food. They needed housing. They needed dignity. And slowly, Musk began to understand. The realization. One evening, Musk sat alone in his office, staring out over the city skyline. His entire life had been about building toward the future, toward Mars, toward AI, toward technology that would change civilization itself. But had he ever truly seen the people right in front of him? Keanu had been right. Real wealth wasn't just about money. It was about impact. And impact started with understanding, a new kind of investment. The next morning, Musk sent out a simple, direct tweet. Change doesn't start with money. It starts with listening. Then, without further fanfare, he announced a new initiative, one that had nothing to do with space travel or AI, a direct fund dedicated to real, immediate human needs. No publicity stunts, no grand speeches, just action. And somewhere in the city, in a quiet subway station, Keanu Reeves read the news on his phone. He smiled. Then, as always, he went on with his day, walking among the people, unseen yet deeply felt, proving once again that true wealth was never about numbers, but because, for the first time, someone like Elon Musk had truly listened. The following day, reporters asked Keanu for his thoughts. He gave them only 3 words. This is good. And that was all he needed to say. The world reacts. The world, of course, had plenty to say. Social media exploded. Debates raged between those who admired Musk's transformation and those who doubted its sincerity. Some people called it the Keanu effect. The idea that one man, with no agenda, no wealth-driven ambition, had somehow influenced one of the most powerful figures of the modern era. But Keanu wasn't interested in labels. While the world debated, he continued to live as he always had. A few days later, an envelope arrived at his home. Inside was another handwritten letter from Musk. Thank you for the conversation. You were right. Change starts small. I'm trying. Keanu folded the letter, placed it on his desk, and went back to his day. He didn't need a billionaire's gratitude. He only needed to know that somewhere, someone was finally seeing the world a little differently. A billionaire's true wealth. Musk's initiative took off in ways even he hadn't predicted. Instead of throwing money at problems blindly, he began working directly with communities. He sat in on meetings, learned from social workers, spoke with students, veterans, single parents, people who had never before had a voice in his world. He still worked on space travel. He still built AI. He still pushed humanity toward the stars. But now, he also looked at the ground beneath his feet. One evening, as he was walking alone through a small community he had funded, he overheard a little boy talking to his mother. The boy pointed at a new learning center Musk's fund had built. "Mom, do you think I can be an astronaut one day?" The mother smiled, tears in her eyes. "Of course, baby, you can be anything." Musk felt something tighten in his chest. For all the rockets he had launched, for all the futuristic dreams he had pursued, this moment, felt like the most important thing he had ever built. And in that instant, he understood. Keanu Reeves had never been his rival. He had been his greatest teacher. And that, Musk realized, was a kind of wealth no amount of money could buy. The wealth of meaning. The unspoken rivalry ends. Elon Musk had spent his life chasing the stars. But for the first time, he found himself grounded, not in failure, not in defeat, but in understanding. The world had always seen him as an innovator, a risk-taker, a man who pushed humanity toward a new frontier. Yet, here he was, investing in the simplest and most overlooked frontier of all: people. His human-first initiative had taken off faster than he anticipated. Billionaires rarely made headlines for giving without expecting something in return, and yet Musk wasn't focused on the coverage. He was focused on the work. And in the silence that followed, one thing became clear. His unspoken rivalry with Keanu Reeves had ended. Because in the end, it had never really been a rivalry. Keanu had never been competing. He had simply been a quiet victory. Keanu remained as he always was, humble, distant from the noise of fame, a quiet force in the background of people's lives. He didn't gloat over Musk's shift in perspective. He didn't give interviews about it. He didn't care about the headlines calling him the man who changed a billionaire. Instead, he kept doing what he had always done. One day, he visited a children's hospital in San Francisco, sitting down with kids fighting battles far greater than money or fame. He told them stories, made them laugh, and left behind an anonymous donation, big enough to cover treatments for years. The doctors didn't know it was him. The nurses didn't make a big deal about it. Keanu didn't want them to. A few days later, he was spotted riding the subway again, dressed in simple jeans and a hoodie, carrying a book instead of a phone. A fan recognized him, and without thinking, blurted out, "Dude, you changed Elon Musk." Keanu laughed, shaking his head. "Nah, man," he said. "People change themselves." And that was the end of it. To him, the story was over. But for Musk, the journey was just beginning. The smallest change, the biggest impact. Musk's new approach to philanthropy wasn't a fleeting interest. He had seen too much, heard too many stories, and now he couldn't unsee the reality that had been invisible to him for years. Instead of just funding initiatives, he started showing up. He walked into schools that lacked resources and asked teachers, face to face, "What do you need?" He visited rehabilitation centers and sat with recovering veterans, listening, really listening, to their pain. He even spent time in homeless shelters, eating with the people he once thought of in statistics rather than stories. And the strangest thing happened. For the first time, Musk wasn't the center of attention. He was just there, a billionaire sitting on a plastic chair, sharing a meal with someone who had lost everything. No cameras, no press, just human connection. It changed him in ways he hadn't expected. Because in those quiet moments, he realized something that had eluded him for years. The biggest impact he could have wasn't through technology or wealth. It was through presence. And in that, he finally understood Keanu Reeves. The billionaire and the actor meet again. Months passed before Musk and Keanu crossed paths again. It wasn't at a press event. It wasn't on a stage. It was by accident. Musk was in New York for a low-profile visit to a community center he had recently funded. It was a small, grassroots operation helping struggling artists find their footing. Painters, writers, musicians who had been overlooked in the race for commercial success. He wasn't expecting to see Keanu there. But there he was, sitting on the floor, cross-legged, surrounded by a group of young musicians, his head tilted as he listened to a teenage girl play a song she had written on a battered old guitar. She was nervous, fumbling through a few chords, but Keanu simply smiled and encouraged her. "Don't worry about being perfect," he said. "Just play." Musk didn't interrupt. He didn't announce himself. He just watched. And when the girl finished, Keanu clapped. His face lit up with genuine appreciation. Musk waited until the group had dispersed before approaching. "You always do that?" Musk asked, his tone casual. Keanu turned, raising an eyebrow. "Do what?" "Just be there," Musk said. "No cameras, no attention, just showing up." Keanu shrugged, slipping his hands into his pockets. "It's the simplest thing in the world, man." Musk exhaled, nodding. He looked around at the small, underfunded space, now thriving thanks to donations from his own initiative. You know, Musk said, I thought changing the world was about being the biggest, the loudest, the most innovative. Keanu smirked. And Musk smiled. Really smiled. Turns out, it's about showing up. Keanu chuckled. You're catching on. They stood there for a moment, two men from entirely different worlds, understanding each other in a way that words couldn't fully capture. Then Musk reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. A folded-up piece of paper. Here, he said, handing it to Keanu. Keanu unfolded it. Inside was an old, crumpled movie ticket stub. Keanu looked up, confused. What's this? Musk smirked. It's from The Matrix, 1999. The first time I ever saw it. Keanu blinked. Musk shrugged. You said wealth isn't about money. It's about moments that matter. He gestured to the ticket. That movie made me think. It changed the way I saw the world. Maybe this is the richest thing I own. Keanu stared at him for a moment. Then, slowly, a grin spread across his face. He folded the ticket carefully and tucked it into his jacket pocket. I'd say that's a pretty good investment, he said. Musk laughed. And for the first time in his life, he felt like the richest man in the world. The currency of connection. A new beginning. Elon Musk had always been a man who measured value in innovation, in numbers, in large-scale impact. His entire career had been defined by acceleration, building, scaling, and disrupting entire industries. Yet here he was, standing in a dimly lit community center in New York, holding an old movie ticket stub, and realizing that some of the most valuable things in life couldn't be calculated. Across from him, Keanu Reeves simply smiled, slipping the crumpled Matrix ticket into his pocket like it was an artifact worth more than any billionaire's fortune. And in that moment, Musk understood something that had eluded him for years. Impact wasn't just about shaping the future. It was about being present in the now. It was about showing up. For the first time in his life, Musk wasn't thinking about Mars. He was thinking about Earth. The ripple effect. News of Musk's transformation had already spread worldwide. His human-first initiative had grown into something bigger than even he had anticipated. Other billionaires, skeptical at first, had begun taking notice. Some dismissed it as a phase. Others saw the shift and began questioning their own wealth and how they used it. And some, just a few, began following in Musk's footsteps. It started small. A few high-profile figures quietly redirected their money toward direct action charities instead of venture capital. Celebrities, athletes, and CEOs started funding local programs instead of just global ones. A new kind of movement was forming, one that wasn't about ego, competition, or making headlines. It was about listening. And Keanu Reeves. He just kept living the way he always had. A billionaire among strangers. Months later, Musk found himself walking alone in downtown Los Angeles. No security. No cameras. Just a baseball cap pulled low and a jacket that made him look like any other guy in the city. He wandered without purpose, taking in the sounds of the street. The laughter of children, the murmur of conversations, the rhythmic tapping of a busker's drum against a street pole. Eventually, he found himself near a small outdoor cafe. A group of people sat outside, engaged in deep conversation. A few of them were laughing, some were listening intently. And sitting among them, looking as effortlessly at home as if he'd been born for these moments, was Keanu Reeves. Musk watched from a distance. He saw Keanu lean forward, nodding as a young man, a struggling musician. From the look of him, spoke passionately about his dreams. Keanu wasn't just pretending to listen. He was listening. Fully. Completely. Musk hesitated, then approached. Keanu looked up, smiling as if he had been expecting him. Well, he said, if it isn't the richest man in the world. Musk smirked and took a seat. Depends on how you measure wealth. Keanu chuckled. Now you're getting it. For the next few hours, they sat with strangers, talking about everything and nothing. Musk didn't speak about rockets, or billion-dollar ventures. Instead, he asked people what they dreamed of, what made them happy, what struggles they faced. And he listened, really listened. For once, he wasn't trying to solve problems with algorithms or investments. He was just there. And it felt different. It felt right. The legacy of two men. The world didn't know what to make of the strange friendship that had formed between Elon Musk and Keanu Reeves. One, a billionaire obsessed with technology. The other, an actor who lived like a common man despite his wealth. Yet, in their own ways, they had both changed the world. Keanu had done it through quiet kindness, through small but meaningful interactions. Musk had done it through large-scale innovation, but had now discovered the power of small moments. Together, they had created something new, not a company, not a movement, but an idea. The idea that wealth wasn't just about money. It was about connection, about presence, about showing up. The final conversation. One evening, as they sat on a rooftop overlooking the Los Angeles skyline, Musk turned to Keanu and asked, "Do you ever wonder what your legacy will be?" Keanu thought for a moment before shaking his head. "Nah, man. Legacy is just a fancy word for the footprints we leave behind. And footprints disappear eventually." Musk frowned. "Then why do you do what you do?" Keanu smiled. "Because I'm here. Right now. And so are they. That's enough." Musk leaned back, exhaling. For a man who had spent his life chasing the stars, those words felt more profound than anything he had ever heard. And for the first time, he understood. Life wasn't about how far you could go. It was about how close you could get to others. And with that, the richest man in the world finally felt wealthy. The wealth that lasts. The quiet after the storm. Time passed, and the media gradually moved on. The world, always hungry for new controversies and viral stories, found fresh topics to dissect. The so-called Keanu effect became an urban legend, a fleeting moment where people questioned what truly mattered, before returning to their routines. But something had changed, even if the world wasn't loud about it. The Human First initiative continued to grow, quietly funding education, housing, and mental health programs. Other billionaires, once hesitant, began investing in people instead of just markets. Small businesses, struggling artists, single parents, and war veterans, people who had never expected to be noticed, suddenly found themselves supported in ways that felt deeply personal, rather than transactional. And at the heart of it all, two men, one who had built his life around technology, and one who had built his life around being present, watched it unfold, knowing they had played a part in something bigger than themselves. A man and his legacy. Keanu Reeves never wanted a legacy. He had spent his life resisting the idea that he was anyone special. He had lost too much, his best friend, his child, his partner, to believe that life owed him anything. But what he did believe in was kindness, not the grand theatrical kind, not the kind that made headlines or earned praise. The simple kind. Like giving up his subway seat to someone who needed it more. Like listening, really listening, to people who had never been heard. Like showing up when no one expected him to. His wealth wasn't measured in dollars. It was measured in the moments that mattered. And that, he realized, was the only legacy worth leaving. Elon Musk's final experiment. For Elon Musk, the transformation had been gradual. He still built rockets. He still pushed technology forward. He still dreamed of Mars. But now, he understood something deeper. His old self would have measured success by the companies he created, the innovations he patented, the billion-dollar deals he closed. His new self measured success differently. In the teacher who no longer had to buy school supplies with their own salary. In the veteran who finally found a home after years on the streets. In the artist who was able to pursue their craft without fear of starving. These weren't numbers. They were lives. And for the first time, Musk realized that while technology could take humanity to the stars, Only humanity itself could make that journey meaningful. The last meeting. Years passed before Keanu and Musk met again. By now, Musk's Human First initiative had become one of the most influential philanthropic movements in history. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't driven by PR. It simply worked. Keanu, meanwhile, remained unchanged, still riding the subway, still slipping through the world with quiet humility, still living like a man who had found peace in the smallest of things. Their meeting wasn't planned. Musk was in Tokyo for a SpaceX event. Keanu was there simply to explore the city, alone as always, blending in as effortlessly as ever. They found each other by accident in a quiet ramen shop, both seeking solitude in the midst of a bustling metropolis. Musk, for once, wasn't surrounded by bodyguards, PR teams, or tech executives. He was just another man, wearing a simple black hoodie, sipping broth in silence. Keanu glanced at him, smirked, and gestured to the empty seat beside him. Musk sat down without a word. For a while, they ate in silence. Then Musk, staring into his bowl, finally said, "You were right." Keanu smiled. "About what?" Musk exhaled. "Everything." Keanu chuckled. "That's a dangerous thing to admit." Musk smirked. "Maybe. But I don't care." He paused, then looked at Keanu. "You never wanted a legacy, did you?" Keanu shook his head. "Nope." Musk frowned. "But you have one." Keanu shrugged. "Maybe." They fell into silence again, listening to the soft hum of the city outside. Then Musk reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. Keanu raised an eyebrow as Musk placed it on the table. A tiny, crumpled movie ticket stub. Not the one from The Matrix. A different one. Keanu picked it up, reading the faded text. It was for a small, independent film, a story about an ordinary man doing small acts of kindness that rippled into something bigger than himself. Keanu looked up. Musk smirked. "Figured I owed you one." Keanu held the ticket for a long moment, then slipped it into his pocket. "Guess that makes us even," he said. Musk grinned. "Not even close." They both laughed, two men who had come from opposite worlds, but had somehow, in the strangest of ways, arrived at the same understanding. That true wealth wasn't about power or innovation or even success. It was about the lives you touched, the moments you shared, the presents you gave. And in that moment, sitting in a tiny ramen shop in Tokyo, two of the most influential men in the world realized something beautiful. They had spent their lives searching for meaning in different ways. But in the end, they had both found it in the same place. The wealth that lasts. Years later, long after both men had gone their separate ways, after their influence had become part of history, people still talked about them. Not about their money. Not about their careers. Not about their accomplishments. They talked about something deeper. They talked about the way Musk, despite being a billionaire, had learned to listen, to invest in people instead of just ideas. They talked about how Keanu, despite his fame, had lived like an ordinary man, proving that kindness was the simplest and most powerful thing a person could give. And somewhere, in the quiet places of the world, on subways, in community centers, in small ramen shops, strangers still met, still listened, still showed up for each other. Because wealth fades, technology evolves, legacies shift, but kindness, that lasts forever.